So it's been a few weeks since the last episode of South Park, since Matt and Trey decided to delay the release of this episode for an extra week, citing the fact that they just didn't get it done in time. Now this was pretty surprising to me considering they've been making all of their episodes in 6 days for the past 25 years, and in that time they only ever missed the deadline once due to a blackout at South Park Studios back in 2013. So to hear that they missed the deadline when they had a whole extra week to work was kind of weird to me. But it's okay, a delay really shouldn't change that much. I mean, how much could the current cultural landscape of the US really change in only a couple of weeks? Oh, wait. Yeah, so I saw many people speculating that they actually had to completely rework this episode following the death of Charlie Kirk, who they had just parodied only a few episodes ago, but personally, I don't think that's the case. It wouldn't have really made sense for them to be making another episode about him, considering he hadn't done anything super relevant since the episode was released. Not to mention the fact that the idea of South Park pulling punches at the risk of offending people is about as likely as Pip becoming my favorite character. But with the episode being delayed, I had plenty of time to wonder what their plan was with this whole situation. Were they going to talk about it? And if they did, what was their angle going to be? I mean, it's pretty tricky to try to make light of something so horrific so soon, but it wouldn't be the first time they had done it. But after finally watching the episode, it seems like they tried to avoid the topic altogether. Although, depending on who you ask, this episode might have been very relevant to that situation, considering they decided to take more than a few shots at Israel. It really felt like it was only a matter of time before they finally talked about it, so I'm glad to see that they finally did. But they actually tackled a pretty broad range of topics, including gambling apps, censorship, and the FCC. And obviously there was a Trump plotline, which I think we can expect from every episode of the season, but I think this episode did a really good job of moving away from the trap of just constantly dunking on Trump, and instead just allowing him to be his own character and not focusing on his real-life actions. They're definitely setting up for some kind of major arc with Trump, Satan, and JD Vance, and if they continue with this attitude of their characters being only loosely tied to their real life counterparts, I think it would make for a great arc. And you know, I was thinking about these videos and I can't help but feel like they get a bit repetitive sometimes. I really don't think I'm that good at doing episode reviews, so to try to spice things up a little, I decided for the rest of the season I will write a short slam poetry verse about each episode, starting now. Nowadays, everyone's hooked on gambling, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, de-scrambling. Cartman defending the Jews, what could this mean? Kyle's mom is like the Karen Sydney Sweeney. Being a bitch is in her genes. The president is censoring again. The slippery slope is getting steep. He's the Roadrunner, and Brendan Carr is Wile E. Coyote. Meep meep. Vance wants to kill Satan's baby. He never wanted it at all. He should have taken his master's word and slipped the dude some Tylenol. Thank you. Okay, that was weird. Let's just talk about the episode. So the episode opens with a kid giving a presentation to the class about the Weebelows, which is basically an extension of the Cub Scouts that I assumed was made up for this episode, but as it turns out, it's actually a real thing. The boys are more interested in determining whether the speaker is a guy or a girl, and when they don't get their answer, they decide to gamble on it through peer-to-peer betting. This is in reference to platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket, which are basically the natural evolution of sports gambling, where you can place bets on real-world events. For example, right now I could go bet on who will win the next US presidential election, will there be a new variant of COVID this year, and most importantly, will Kai Cenat reach 1 million subs by the end of Mafiathon 3? Cartman and Stan are really into it, but Kyle isn't caught up, so Cartman gives him the rundown of the bets.
Will the girls' soccer team win on Friday? Will there be a snow day this month? Will Kyle's mom strike Gaza and destroy a Palestinian hospital?
Now, for those of you who don't know, Kyle's mom is essentially the OG Karen. She started a war with Canada, trying to get Terrence and Phillip taken off the air back in the movie, ruined the school Christmas play because she felt like it wasn't intrusive enough, and all around has a very long history of just being an overbearing, preachy woman. She hasn't really had any large roles in the show in a long time, so I definitely appreciated the fact that she was able to reprise her role as the town Karen.
Why the hell would my mom destroy a Palestinian hospital? 'Cause she's a Jew?
Fox News is reporting on these apps discussing how the most popular bet at the moment is what the gender of Satan and Trump's baby will be. We then cut to the White House where my favorite character of the season, JD Vance, is delivering gifts for the baby to the president. He tells the president about how much his life is going to change after this baby, saying that he won't have time for any of his leisure activities. Upon hearing this, the president immediately realizes what needs to be done. He's not exactly subtle about it, and Satan immediately calls him out.
You wanna get in a hot tub and smoke some cigarettes?
Do you want to get rid of the baby? I don't think your followers would be very happy if we got an abortion.
Meanwhile, Kyle is pissed about people betting on the Gaza situation, and Jimmy suggests that he talks to the people in charge. So Kyle gives a call to the strategic advisor for predictive markets, who happens to be one of the most haunting creatures the show has ever seen.
Hello?
He redirects him to the people who are actually in charge, the CFTC.
Hello?
But that's not the right place either, so he then redirects him once again to the FCC.
Hello?
This character is obviously supposed to represent Donald Trump Jr., and I really love his character design of being like half real picture, half cartoon. It is genuinely uncanny with him looking like something out of an analog horror series. But in real life, Donald Trump Jr. is the strategic advisor for several predictive markets, including Polymarket and Kalshi. Now, interestingly enough, Polymarket has been banned from operating in the US since 2022 up until recently. And by recently, I mean shortly after Donald Trump Jr. became their strategic advisor. Obviously, this raised some concern, with many citing a conflict of interest, considering the platform was unbanned after the son of the man who can decide the legality of these companies is now in charge of two of them. Now, to play a bit of devil's advocate here, it's not actually as simple as Trump Jr. is in charge now, so it's legal. Polymarket was actually set to begin operating in the US after buying a CFTC-approved exchange about a month before he became the head. But the CFTC is, of course, controlled by the current administration, and at that point, he was already in charge at Kalshi, so it definitely isn't the best optics. And this is what the show is making fun of, with Trump Jr. being in charge of the regulators and the regulators for the regulators. They're pointing out what they believe to be corruption. But Trump is busy setting up a Bugs Bunny-esque trap on the staircase to get rid of Satan's baby, but instead, the head of the FCC happens to walk in at just the wrong time.
No, Brendan Carr, no!
Whoa!
The boys are busy discussing how Kyle's crash out has caused the odds of Kyle's mom bombing Gaza to go up, and Cartman starts plotting on how they can manipulate the odds in their favor.
It's called a conflict of interest, you guys. It's a way to make free money. Isn't that illegal? Yes! All we have to do is make sure Kyle stays angry, and at the same time go talk anti-Semitic shit about his mom to goose the odds up even more.
Cartman is successful in his rage bait, and he goes around the school convincing everyone that she might actually do it to get those odds even higher. Meanwhile, Kyle's mom is eating with some of the other moms who successfully rage bait her into a frenzy about the Gaza situation, since, of course, all of them are betting as well.
It's not Jews versus Palestine, it's Israel versus Palestine!
What are you putting your money on?
I mean, it's a ridiculous bet, but she seems pretty pissed off.
The president then switches up his plan, this time making a delicious soup for Satan that is absolutely full of Plan B. Once again, it doesn't work, and once again, the head of the FCC just happens to wander in at a bad time.
Ah, Brendan Carr, don't do it!
It's funny how watching this show as much as I do, you begin to pick up on bits that they reuse over time. Because this is basically the exact same bit they did back in season 4 when Kenny's mom was pregnant and he didn't want a sibling, so he laced her drink with abortion pills only for his dad to drink it and have a very similar reaction. Also, the president clearly isn't very educated on contraceptives because Plan B isn't an abortion pill. It works by preventing the pregnancy in the first place by delaying ovulation. So taking it after you're already pregnant wouldn't even do anything. See, this is actually an educational channel. Kyle's mom is ranting to her family about how Jews as a whole are being associated with Israel's actions. She gets so angry that even her own family is beginning to question what she'll do, with Ike sneaking in a quick bet that she will strike Gaza.
I'm going to find out where all this is coming from, and I'm going to give them a piece of my mind!
The adorable JD brings an adorable cat to the president as another gift for the baby, where he explains to the president how cats can actually be dangerous to a pregnancy due to being carriers of toxoplasmosis, which is a parasite that can cause a lot of complications in pregnancy if the mother is infected. And interestingly, this is actually the second time I've talked about toxoplasmosis on this channel, because I have a whole video where I talk about zombie parasites, and toxo has been shown to potentially have some insane effects in humans. Check out that video if you're interested. So the president immediately gets to work setting up a trap for Satan that would cover him in cat litter, but of course it doesn't work, and the head of the FCC shows up at a rather inopportune time.
Brendan Carr!
Cartman is bragging about the fact that his rage bait got the odds all the way up to a 95% chance that Kyle's mom will strike Gaza, only for him to bet $1,400 that she won't. But just then, Jimmy comes to announce some bad news.
Kyle's mom's in Israel!
Cartman immediately switches his tune and tells Kyle that he cannot allow his mother to do anything. Kyle then makes a call to the government of Israel, giving me probably my favorite joke from the episode.
Hello?
Meanwhile, Brendan Carr is in the hospital where he learns that he has toxoplasmosis. The doctor explains to JD Vance what this might mean for him.
If the toxoplasmosis parasite gets to his brain, I'm afraid he may lose his freedom of speech.
Yeah, South Park has never been known for their subtlety. But this is when we get the twist reveal that JD Vance has been the one pulling the strings this whole time, subtly planting these ideas into the president's head about getting rid of the baby since he's next in line to be president and a baby might get in the way of that. He remarks that if Carr keeps getting in the way of his plans, things might not go so well for him.
We can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way.
This was one of my favorite parts of the episode, and with it, I can finally give the context that I've been holding back on this whole time. So following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, Jimmy Kimmel made a claim on his show that MAGA supporters were, quote, desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered him as anything other than one of them. He then segued this into making fun of Donald Trump for seemingly not actually caring about Kirk. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, and being that I'm a guy who makes a living talking about a cartoon on the internet, I'm sure you are all dying to hear my thoughts on politics. So let's talk about it. Now, first of all, the implication that the shooter was MAGA is just objectively wrong, and I don't think anyone really even thought that was the case. Most of the discourse I saw about this situation surrounded whether he was a radical leftist or a radical far-right like Nick Fuentes type guy, so the idea that this was a MAGA guy is pretty obviously not true. But shortly after this, ABC announced that Jimmy Kimmel's show would be suspended indefinitely, following remarks from the FCC chairman Brendan Carr, in which he mentioned that he found Jimmy Kimmel's comments disgusting, ABC's broadcasting license is granted to them by the FCC, and immediately followed that up by saying, quote, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Now, to some, this may seem like a threat directly to ABC from the people who hold the power to revoke their broadcasting license. It certainly seems like ABC felt this way considering their decision to immediately suspend Kimmel after this statement. And this situation seems pretty familiar considering Stephen Colbert's firing a couple months ago after his comments about Donald Trump. Now, let me be clear. I think that both Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert are some of the most unfunny, cringeworthy comedians on TV. I think I'd rather watch A Little Late with Lily Singh than either of their shows. And if ABC had just decided to remove Kimmel themselves without these statements from Carr, they are perfectly within their rights to do so, being a private company. The problem is, when the federal government is coming out and seemingly threatening to revoke a company's broadcasting license because they said something they didn't like, to me, that is a blatant attempt at removing someone's freedom of speech. You don't have to like what he said. I don't like what he said. But this country is founded on freedom of speech, which means the federal government cannot control what you say. What he said may have been factually incorrect, but that's not illegal. If you couldn't lie on TV, CNN and Fox News would have been taken down a long time ago. And if you know anything about South Park, the one hill that they are willing to die on is freedom of speech. This whole Brendan Carr Looney Tunes subplot with the president is them making the point that the FCC is complacent in the president's attempts to silence the people he doesn't agree with Trump just bitching Carr around and humiliating him by forcing him to do his bidding. And all of this censorship can only lead to one outcome.
I'm afraid he may lose his freedom of speech.
Oh yeah, and the way his arm is positioned in this scene definitely doesn't seem like an accident. Now, of course, people are going to try to say this was a financial decision by ABC and it had nothing to do with Carr's comments, but considering ABC decided to reinstate Kimmel after they lost nearly $5 billion in stocks, it's pretty clear that it was never business motivated. Carr himself even tried to come out and say that he wasn't trying to threaten them, but if you watch the clip where he says it, it is incredibly obvious that's exactly what he meant, especially considering he prefaced his statement by saying that the FCC is the one that gives ABC their broadcasting license.
And they have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
And not to mention the fact that when the president gets on Truth Social and shares his anger with Kimmel being reinstated, threatening to sue the company, it just goes to show what all of this was really about. Anyways, enough of the ranting, let's finish up this episode. I was a huge fan of the twist that JD Vance was the villain lurking in the shadows this whole time. I already loved his design so much, and his evil face is really just the cherry on top. Although I do find it a little odd that he's so against the coming of the Antichrist, considering his ties to Peter Thiel, but that's a topic for another day. But But Cartman's quest to get the bet removed ends up being successful, which means that his $1,400 is safe. He has a chat with Kyle about it, who reveals that he knew that his mom never actually planned to strike Gaza. We then cut to Kyle's mom giving Netanyahu a stern talking to as the credits roll.
There you are, Mr. Netanyahu! Killing thousands and flattening neighborhoods, then wrapping yourself in Judaism like it's some shield from criticism. You're making life for Jews miserable and life for American Jews impossible!
So now let's talk about my feelings on this episode as a whole. In my opinion, this might have been the best episode of the season so far. It felt very cohesive in a way that the other episodes haven't. I feel like the other episodes of the season have had trouble tying the plots together in a way that makes sense, considering their insistence to continue with the Trump plotline. It definitely felt like the Trump stuff kind of derailed those plots sometimes, but here I think it was integrated super well. Also, I really liked that it wasn't insistent on just making fun of the stuff Trump is doing. It definitely feels like they're moving towards a more original storyline for Trump, and it is incredibly refreshing to not just see them rip on him for whatever he's doing in the news this week. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously they still kind of did that. They still criticized him, but it was much more focused on the FCC's willingness to follow his orders rather than Trump himself. I also thought they did a great job handling the topic of Israel and Palestine, making a point to make the clear distinction between Jewish people and the actions of Israel, while simultaneously not going easy on Israel at all. I thought it was super smart to use Kyle's mom as the focus for the episode, considering her previous history of going to some extreme lengths to get her way. At a certain point in the episode, you begin to wonder if maybe she actually will strike Gaza. And of course, the fact that by the end, Cartman is actually fighting against anti-Semitism because he's afraid he might lose his bet, only for him to find out that he actually would have won his bet if he hadn't gotten it removed. It was just textbook Cartman, and it worked incredibly well. Speaking of Cartman, we finally got an episode that focused on the boys. It was exactly what I've been waiting for this entire season, and I was so happy to finally see Kyle play a large part in the episode. A Kyle Cartman episode is a formula that is pretty hard to mess up in my opinion, and the episode proved how great it can be when done correctly. I also really liked the emphasis on the prediction market gambling, because it was kind of the glue that held all the different plot lines together. And of course, I have to mention how great the twist reveal of evil JD Vance was. Obviously, I already really liked his character just because his design and voice were funny, but with this reveal, they've really added another dimension to his character and seem to be preparing for something big, and I'm stoked to see where they go with it. All around, this was a really great episode. They had a lot of things to say, and they somehow managed to fit it all into one episode without it feeling disjointed. Honestly, this one felt the most reminiscent of classic South Park out of anything they've made in a long time. It was cohesive, topical, biting, concise, and most importantly, really funny. I really don't have any complaints about this episode. Everything was done super well. My only complaint is that we're gonna have to wait another 3 weeks before the next episode, which sucks, but honestly, if it means keeping up this level of quality, I am more than happy to wait. So that's it. I'll talk to you guys again soon.